Hi, Todd Martin here with the second part of our walking code cross training using kickboxing techniques. We're using an analysis of the core techniques that we have used for the walking code and applying those core techniques to kickboxing. This will give you something to do for exercise for the body, but also exercise for the mind. We're trying to learn how exactly to connect the mind to the core to figure out exactly what we're doing when we are doing any type of physical activity. We've already applied these to walking. Now we're applying these same core techniques to kickboxing. And I think this is a really good activity for you to do to cross-train and really work the body in different ways so you can get a better understanding of how the body moves and really work mindful movement in a true way, really connecting to the mind, to the core, to the rest of the body, and move in a most effective way. The next technique we're going to show is the jab, but using a step forward. In the last video, we showed a straight jab from our standing position, or from our kickboxing stance, striking with the forward leg arm. Now we're going to do the same movement, but we're going to step into the jab. So the difference between the regular jab and the step into the jab is going to be just the preparation. So the final strike is going to be using the same core technique of reach, extension of my rear hip, torsional rotation on the left side, opposite side from the rear hip. So my upper torso is turning towards the rear hip, lower torso is turning away from the rear hip, and that's what projects that energy outward with the fist. I'm beginning in the position of set, which means flexion of my left hip here and torsional rotation on the right. I'm switching that to reach, extension of my left hip, torsional rotation on the left. To do the step into the jab, what I'm going to first do is switch the position of set to sink by changing my upper torso rotation towards my right leg. That is going to sink my weight back or shift everything off of my left leg. When I do the step jab, I'm just going to do this long enough to clear my left foot from the ground before I execute the jab. I don't need to fully balance on one leg. But that's essentially the motion. I'm moving from set, turning my upper torso towards my right leg to change the weight. As soon as my weight is off of that leg, I'm now going to do the reach and jab. So I'm going to extend my right hip, continue turning my upper torso to the right, which I already did as I changed the weight like this, and then now I'm going to extend and turn my lower torso to the left. That's going to create the jab. Now I sink back and settle in. That's the core technique of sink and set. So we begin with set, sink, reach, sink, set. In faster motion. Now I'll do it from the side view. Set, sink, reach, sink, set. From the forward view. The next strike I'm going to do is a step punch followed by a back knuckle punch. This was one of the favorite techniques that I learned when I was studying kickboxing, just because it feels interesting. We're starting in our normal position, and I'm going to do a step forward into a jab with my right arm. So I'm essentially going to change my right leg from back to the right leg forward in the process of taking a step and doing a jab. I'm going to begin by shifting all of my weight, collecting my right leg, prepping, and then stepping right into the punch. Or this would, again, just be a jab with my right leg forward. Starting from my normal position. From the side view. What we're doing is first changing weight using sync, upper and lower torso turning towards my standing leg. Let me step back here and do this so you can see the feet. Changing weight using sync, and then I'm going to prep the motion by turning my upper torso to the right, which is going to set my leg up to then strike forward with the jab. The jab is going to be the same core technique of reach, but now extending my left hip, torsional rotation on the right. Change weight, prep, jab. You'll notice that during the strike, my foot pivots out at an angle. It's facing directly forward, and as I punch, it turns out to that same 45-degree angle that we saw before in the basic stance. From the side view. So that is the step punch, and then we're going to follow that by a back knuckle strike. So I'm going to go from the jab, circle my right arm down with a slight elbow bend, and then strike back with the back knuckle of that fist. That motion is going to go from reach, torsional rotation on the right, extension of the left hip, to reach back coming off of the right hip, extension of the right hip, upper torso turn to the left, which it's already doing, but I'm now going to turn my lower torso to the left, and that is going to circle my right fist back and down. I'm extending the right hip, I'm turning my upper torso to the left and lower torso to the left. Now I'm going to do the same reach from the jab and extend my left hip and turn my upper, I'm going to extend my left hip and turn my lower torso to the right, and that's going to trigger the back knuckle. So I've gone from the jab, circle down using reach back, strike forward using reach. So in reach, this is the same core energy as the jab. My upper torso is turning this way, counterclockwise. My lower torso is turning clockwise. I'm pushing off the ground with my left hip to give that energy. Coming from the jab, circle back, back knuckle. Side view. Coming from the jab, circle back, back knuckle. From the beginning, step, punch, circle back, back knuckle. Step, punch, circle back, back knuckle. Now we've then followed that up with a spinning back knuckle and then across. I'm not going to go through the detail on that one, a little too complicated. But just to demonstrate from the side. The next kick I'm going to demonstrate is a rear leg roundhouse kick. If my left leg is forward, it's going to be a round kick with the right leg. I'm going to prep by first stepping out to the side, prepping the motion, and then kicking. And so this is going to be a kick with the shin. However, we're doing this for exercise purposes and not combat purposes. So we're really just focusing on the motion and not exactly what part of the body is going to be contacting your opponent. But we're stepping, prepping, kicking, then returning. From the side view. So let's go through the core techniques for the round kick. We're starting with that step to the side. If you were watching earlier, we did the shuffle to the left, shuffle to the right. That was the shuffle to the left, shuffle to the right. The beginning of the round kick is going to begin with the first motion from the shuffle to the left, shuffling away from my rear leg. I prep with sink to get my left leg off the ground and then push, extending my right hip, torsional rotation on the right. Now, in the shuffle to the left, I then just collected my weight and continued repeating the motion. But in this motion before the rear leg roundhouse, I'm going to do that step, and instead of just collecting my weight over here, I'm now going to reach, pushing off with my right hip, torsional rotation on the left, meaning upper torso turning clockwise, lower torso turning counterclockwise. That's the prep for the strike, for the kick. I've done the step to the side. This hip is an extension with torsion on the right. I now switch the torsion to the left as the prep, and the final kick is going to be driven by flexion of my right hip. I'm doing a quick change from pushing that right leg back to lifting that right leg forward. Push, reach, and then strike. The strike or the kick is set. Set is flexion of my right hip, torsion on the left. So I'm going from extension of the right hip, torsion on the left, to flexion of the right hip, torsion on the left, to throw that leg into the kick. At the same time as I do that kick, my left foot is going to pivot on the ground. Then I have to come back to the original position. Sink, push, reach, set. I'm going to come back using pulse, sink and set. We always come back with that sink and set to get back into our original position. So let me just show you the coming back from the end of the kick. From set, where you use pulse, extension of my right hip, upper and lower torso turning to the right. That's going to swing my leg back. From the end of the kick, swings my leg back, then I sink and set. This prep is really important. Push, reach. I can't simply push here and then start the kick, because then I just get a change of weight to here, which is the same thing as I did when I did the shuffle. So the key part, or the key difference between the shuffle to the left and the kick is in this preparation here, changing my torsional rotation to the left, my right hip, I push off the right leg, throwing the kick. In the rear leg roundhouse, I'm going to begin by changing my weight, pushing to the side, pushing off my right leg, then reach, and then I'm going to flex my right hip as I continue the torsional rotation on the left, and that is going to swing the leg around in the kick, and then I return back. You'll notice the right arm swings out to the side during that motion, during the kick, and that is because my upper torso, which connects to the arms, is turning to the right as I kick to the left. That's because of the torsional rotation on the left. I've set up the torsional rotation on the left, upper torso is turning to the right as I lift my right hip into the kick. And that's what causes the upper torso turning this way to give the effect of the right arm throwing back that way to the side. Side view. Sink, push, reach, set. Pulse, sink, set. Sink, push, reach, set, pulse, sink, set. Now I'm going to show some blocking techniques with the legs, and this is a really good exercise for just the purposes of regular exercise because we're really going to work our lower abs against some gravity resistance as we do this block. We're going to first start with a block off the front leg. And then we're going to do a block with the back leg. And we can alternate. Let me show you the core techniques for the block. We're going to begin by changing weight using sink when I'm going to block with the rear leg. All my upper torso and lower torso are turning towards my standing leg, the left leg. And now I'm going to use reach with extension of my left hip, torsional rotation on the right. That is going to bring my right knee up to my right elbow, creating a whole barrier here, which I use for the block. Change weight, block, come back. When I do the block, my upper torso is turning to the left, my lower torso is turning to the right, and everything is being pushed up with extension of the left hip, bringing my knee towards the elbow, and then I step back. You can try to do it slowly to control the abs and get a little bit more ab workout. From the side view. Now we're going to do the block from the forward leg simply by shifting the weight back using sink and then reach with extension of the right hip. Sink back, reach. Come back with set, which returns you right back to the original position. Sink, reach, set. Sink, reach, set. Sink, reach, sink. The next technique we're going to look at is a knee. So we're going to take the rear knee and we're going to strike forward into our opponent or into our punching bag or heavy bag, whatever we're using. We're going to step forward, prep, and strike forward with the knee. Notice when I strike forward with the knee, I'll do it from the side view. There's going to be a slight backward lean, and the knee will be flexed as I do it. So the knee is not pointing out this way, or the lower leg is not pointing down. The knee will be angled this way because we're really trying to angle the knee outward in the strike. because the heavy bag that you're using is vertical, you're not going to be able to just do a high knee like this and strike the bag. The knee has to be thrusting forward. So you'll notice a backward lean and an angled out knee, and that is going to be driven by the core techniques that we're using to make the movement happen. So first we're going to do a slight step forward. Then this is a key prep motion here where I'm going to push forward, open my hands. Then I'm going to change weight, and then now I'm going to thrust forward. The thrusting forward is reach back. So reach back, I just showed you a minute ago with changing before the push kick. I changed weight using sink, and then I lifted the knee using reach back. Extension of the left hip, concordant rotation going clockwise. But you'll notice my knee or my lower leg in that position is angled down at the floor. So it's not directing forward, it's moving up, ready for that kick with the heel. When I'm doing the knee action, I need to pierce forward with the knee and not just send the knee straight up. So the prep is not the same as before our rear leg push kick. Rear leg push kick, knee goes straight up. In this motion, where we're doing a knee forward, there's a prep that's going to allow the knee to go forward. That prep is going to be first sinking back, and then I'm going to turn my upper torso back in this direction. So from clockwise to counterclockwise, that's going to start a forward motion. So that gives me torsional rotation on the right, flexion of my left hip. Now I'm going to push back with my right hip as I continue torsional rotation on the right, and that's going to open my hands up. That is not just me trying to grab an opponent so I can pull him down and knee. It's an actual motion that comes from the core movement of push. The pushing back of my right hip as I use torsional rotation on the right forces my arms open like this naturally. So prep with a slight step forward, push. Now I'm going to change weight using set, torsional rotation on the left, flexion of the right hip. You notice the knee is already significantly bent. It's not hanging down like that. That's a natural consequence of the core techniques that I just used. Now I use reach back, extension of the left hip, concordant clockwise rotation of the upper and lower torso, and that is going to thrust my knee forward as I arch my back. I'm not doing it fully because it's hard to stop in the middle of the motion, but I would thrust the knee forward. The knee is flexed. The toes are really almost pointed down like this, and I'm going to actually come up slightly on my toes on the left leg and then come back. When we do the movement, there's a pulling back of the arms, and you can think that if you're in combat, this is to help pull the person down. There's always kind of a reason for things, But when you're doing the motion with the core, that motion of the arms coming back is automatic. It's not really optional. It comes with the core movement. It comes with the transition from push, opens the arms, set, and as I push up using reach back, that arm motion coming back is automatic. If you're using the core, you can't really stop it. Slow motion. The next strike I'm going to show is an elbow strike. Starting from this position, my normal kickboxing stance, we're going to do a slight squat backwards, and then we're going to strike with the forward elbow, throwing it in a round fashion, hooking it for the strike. It begins with two motions. Reach back from extension of the left hip, same as we did when we prepped the uppercut. And then I'm going to shift forward using sink. After the prep, I'm going to flex my right hip, meaning I'm going to lift my right knee forward. At the same time, I turn my upper and lower torso to the left. And this extreme rotation from clockwise to counterclockwise of the core, driven with flexion of the right hip, is going to actually cause a counterintuitive circling of the body and of the elbow. So why do you get this circling of the elbow? It's because I'm prepping with all my torso turning to the right, and I'm going to suddenly switch the torso to the left, upper and lower, but I'm powering that not by pushing off of the right leg. I'm powering it with flexion of the right leg or right hip. Flexion of the right hip gives a pulling action, if you're looking at it in isolation, towards the side of the flexing hip. When I flex the hip, if I just show you like what you can visually see as hip flexion, I flex the hip, it's pulling the body towards that side. It's harder to see when I'm using the lifting of the knee forward, which is the same thing as flexing the hip. It still has that pulling action turning towards that side, even though it's invisible. So I have my upper and lower torso turning quickly to the left, while my hip action is pulling the body back to the right at the same time, and that causes this hooking action. Prep, strike. So this is the core technique of sink. Flexion of the right hip, concordant rotation of the upper and lower torso away from the active hip. Now, not coincidentally, sink is the core technique that is associated with the Tai Chi technique of elbow strike. Elbow strike is one of the fundamental 8 techniques of Tai Chi, and oddly enough, in all of the Tai Chi sequences or forms that you do, there is no actual elbow striking action. So people can get confused of, well, why is this technique called elbow strike when in reality there's no elbow striking anywhere in the Tai Chi forms that we see. And so the elbow strike is an energy that we use throughout all kinds of different motions. So as I said, sink is the same thing as elbow strike, and you've seen that we use sink all the time. So in reality, we use elbow strike all the time, but rarely is it actually used to create an elbow strike. In this situation, we're actually using the core technique of elbow strike to create an elbow strike. Starting with reach back and then sink, which is actually elbow strike. Reach back, just for your Tai Chi knowledge, is the Tai Chi technique of shoulder strike. So we're going from shoulder strike to elbow strike and then back. or reach back, sink. And then now I'm going to sink back, reversing everything, flexing my left hip as I turn the upper and lower torso to the right, and then set. So I have reach back, sink off of right hip flexion, sink off of left hip flexion, set off of left hip flexion. Side view. The next techniques we're going to look at, we've already seen during our strikes, and these are going to be the slips. I'm going to do a slip forward, or I'm going to do a slip backward. I didn't discuss these in terms of slipping before because we were using them for preparation. I used the forward slip in prep for the hook, and I used the backward slip in preparation for the uppercut. But we can use these just to slip a punch forward or backwards. Both of these slips are using reach back, extension of the active hip, upper and lower torso turn away from the active hip. That's reach back coming from the rear hip. That's reach back coming from the forward hip. The peripheral actions in reach back are always going to be flexion of the knee on the side opposite the extending hip and dorsiflexion of the ankle on the side opposite the extending hip. So when I use my right hip to perform reach back, my left knee is going to flex and my left ankle is going to dorsiflex. When I reach back off the left hip, my right knee is going to flex and my right ankle is going to dorsiflex. So I'm going to slip forward, slip back. And there's a diagonal motion involved in both of those. Thanks for watching.